This is the Television Enthusiast Podcast, The Weekly Set.
Episode 31, recorded October 29th, 2015.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TV Enthusiast Podcast, The Weekly Set. This is our Halloween week episode. Today we are going to be talking about 3 shows that we picked each individually for our Advocates of Great Television segment. This is our Halloween-themed one. So the first one that we're going to be covering is The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror, number 6. This is from season 7. And then we're going to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Halloween, which was a season 2 episode. And lastly, we're going to be talking about South Park, A Nightmare on Facetime, which was a season 16 episode of that series. And after we finish all of that, we'll just kind of get to what's coming up in the next week like we usually do. But most of the podcast is going to be focused on those 3 episodes. So without further ado, we're going to bring up Advocates of Great Television, Halloween edition, right now.
Advocates of Great Television. All right.
So let's start off. The Simpsons, Treehouse of Horror 6. This was Kat's pick for Advocates. So
one
so
of
kick us
my
off.
all-time favorite Simpsons episodes, and the Nightmare on Elm Street segment is my probably my favorite Treehouse of Horror segment ever. It's utterly sublime.
Oh yeah, that one is perfect.
I just love all the kids are standing around speculating, and Skinner walks up and he's like, I overheard you talking about this. Let me just dissuade you. This has nothing to do with Groundskeeper Willie. Now stop speculating about this. And when they come home, they're like, oh no, Martin died in school today. And she's like, I don't see what that has to do with Groundskeeper Willie.
Well, I love the flashback scene when they show how he died, how Groundskeeper Willie died, and like it was just like all these things that they had voted nay on were basically like backfiring on him, like one after another.
The whole sequence is brilliant.
And then he finally made his way to the meeting, and they're like, well, take a seat. And he's sitting down while he's all burning.
So perfect. Also, the moment when Martin Prince dies in the middle of class is my single favorite visual moment in the entire Simpsons. It's impossible to describe, but it's so hilarious when he dies. And then when they're wheeling him out of the class, and then they're like, no, not the kindergarten.
They're like, keep him covered up so he doesn't startle the kids, and then they put him in the sheet was stuck, so it just slides right off of him. Yeah.
Get him out of here! No, not the kindergarten!
Not the kindergarten. Oh my god. And making Groundskeeper Willie, Freddy Krueger was brilliant. I mean, they could have, technically, it's Simpsons, so they could have made, like, any character. Like, Groundskeeper Willie just fits it, like, the best, I think. That was a stroke of genius. especially how they just played, like, on his Scottishness. Like, he turns into a bagpipe spider.
Yeah.
Because he's Scottish. Natural.
Those Scots and their bagpipes.
Yeah.
So there were two other segments in this episode as well. First, Attack of the 50-Foot Eyesores, which is a parody of the 1958 film Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, in which Homer steals a huge prop donut from a donut statue, or a statue holding a donut, and all the eyesores, all the giant figures come to life, and
Well, I love how they use it to play in advertisements too, because it's like, I feel like they're actually saying, like, advertisements are actually talking to you. And I love the whole, let's go to an advertiser to write an advertisement jingle.
Yeah.
Don't watch.
Just
don't go to an advertisement.
Yeah.
Just don't look. Just don't look.
Yeah.
Also, I think my favorite moment of it was when they first all start to attack, and they have Kent Brockman on the news just very casually strolling across the rooftop. announcing that all of these advertisements have come to life. Like, it's just the most normal day of occurrence. It's
Yeah. I particularly enjoyed like, you know, everybody turning away from the mascots, but the donut guy tricking Homer with the the stay focused on it.
Now it has sprinkles.
We also got a little cameo in that segment from Krang and what's the other one's name?
Kang and Kodos.
Kodos, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
In case you don't know, Kang and Kodos are named for Klingons from the original Star Trek.
Oh,
okay.
That's interesting.
I did not know that.
I probably should have figured it because they do sound like Klingon names.
Right. They do.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Also, the people who wrote The Simpsons back in the day were clearly giant nerds.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last segment of the Simpsons episode was Homer Cubed, which is a parody of a Twilight Zone episode, as many of the Treehouse of Horror skits are based on Twilight Zone episodes.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the entire concept for Treehouse of Horror was probably just totally inspired or ripped off from Twilight Zone. Again, these guys were huge nerds.
Yeah. And Twilight Zone had just some amazing premises.
Oh yeah.
Going back, you know, I think everybody spoofed Twilight Zone. They you know, there was a South Park episode where they parodied a Twilight Zone thing that the Simpsons had already done, and then were parodying the fact that the Simpsons had already done everything. But then those had already been done by the Twilight Zone. And so they were kind of talking about the idea of, like, you know, ideas that have already been used kind of thing, you know? So yeah, it's Twilight Zone is like the foundation for so many great ideas.
Right.
One of my I think I did a top 10 supernatural episodes, and my top supernatural episode was also based on an episode of Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Which was the one with where you see Lilith as like a little girl and she's on vacation and she's like torturing that family, and it's based on that episode of Twilight Zone where the kid has those powers and.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, but to me that feels appropriate. Like, I didn't grow up on Twilight Zone, but that's cool that some people are still paying homage to it.
Oh yeah. I haven't watched a lot of Twilight Zone. I've seen the big ones though, you know, like the pig-nosed people and the and the guy who loves to read and he goes to the apocalypse and doesn't have glasses anymore and. All those classics.
I do love that though, like the pig-nosed people. Like, I feel like it's kind of sometimes missing from genre television these days. Is like it's structured to challenge you in a particular way, you know?
Yeah, a lot of Twilight Zone episodes. You know, they had like a message behind them. They were structured to challenge you. It wasn't just to be like, ooh, isn't this spooky and weird?
Yeah.
It was like, this has a message, and there was a specific message. The same thing was, you know, with Star Trek, the original Star Trek. Those shows had like a message, you know, some kind of social.
With Star Trek, it was less about episode to episode. It was more kind of like the general view of the future.
Yeah, it was
the
like
future doesn't have to be negative, you know, like.
But it wasn't like some empty. But it wasn't some empty thing. I think back in the 60s, you know, it seemed like a lot of genre television was like socially conscious.
Yeah, well, not just television. I mean, Planet of the Apes had a really huge like swerve at the end that's like, you know, infamous, and you know, social commentary was a huge thing, and that went all the way into like kind of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. You start getting stuff like Night of the Living Dead and those movies. They weren't just horror movies. They had like a very strong like social commentary to them.
Yeah. And now it seems like that seems to be mostly missing.
Yeah.
In a lot of genre stuff today.
The closest I think we have to like a Twilight Zone now is Black Mirror. I think Black Mirror kind of nails that too. Like there's a lot of stuff that makes you think in Black Mirror. Like I was like, oh, that's kind of a disturbing take on something that I've taken for granted, you know?
Right.
So, but welcome to the Twilight Zone podcast. No, it just came up because, you can't talk about Simpsons Treehouse of Horror without talking about Twilight.
Well, this one, I think this one...
Or vice versa, I think, really, nowadays.
I think this one is my favorite of the three, just because, just because, like, I was blown away when I first saw it, like, seeing Homer in, like, CG, in, like, 3D and stuff. It was really... At the time, it was really freaking cool. It was pretty.
You watch it back now, and it's kind of like, ooh.
Yeah, and now it's like, oh well, that's cute. But back then, it was like there wasn't a lot of.
That was shocking.
There wasn't like a lot of CG animation around, so to see that was like pretty shocking,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was mostly like there was like that music video that Money for Nothing, I think, that had CG, and that was cited as an example of what they wanted to do with Homer Cubed, was that they wanted to surpass that amazing CG animation.
That amazing CG animation of Money for Nothing.
Yeah. This is an episode, by the way, from 1995, so this is old. This is, as far as CG really started picking up probably in the late 90s. In film, it started picking up really big in the late 90s. With TV, it didn't really get going until like the mid 2000s.
Toy Story came out in like 98, and so this predates Toy Story, which was the film that really got the whole CG animate movement going. So this was definitely, at the time, this was really novel, and I think it's because of that this particular segment sticks with me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was one of those things that if you were there at the time, it's just you didn't see anything else like it.
I also just cracked up again watching it when the place is like funneling out, like Homer had pierced it and it was all funneling out and being sucked into oblivion, and Bart's like telling him, Homer, you have to jump, and Homer like he's all, no problem, and he starts running off the edge and just runs down. And it totally made me think of like when you miss a jump in like a Mario game or something.
Oh yeah.
You're running and you just miss, so you just basically run right off the edge, and you feel like an idiot. And that's exactly what Homer did. He just ran right off the edge.
Yeah, he just ran right off the edge. And he gets sucked into all. Then he ends up in like the real world. So
he goes to an erotic cake shop.
So you got a CG 3D Homer in like a live action.
Yeah, Ventura Boulevard at an erotic cake shop.
And he's like, ooh, erotic cakes.
About having Homer into the real world, that is like, I think if I had watched it back in the 90s, it would have blown my mind if I had understood what it's doing. But the whole notion of one of your fictional characters entering the real world at the end of the episode is just the kind of thing you can expect from The Simpsons, but kind of hurts your head if you really think about it too hard.
Yeah.
I love it, because it's like, it's totally Simpsons revolutionizing the whole notion of like meta and postmodern and stuff.
Well, and that's what The Simpsons did a lot with, played a lot with kind of like format tropes in television and stuff in the early days. Because it was one of those shows where, because it was animated, they didn't have to kind of, they weren't stuck to like physical limitations, they could kind of do things that were out there. But in the same time, it was, more adult orientated instead of, like a kid's show. So they could be headier and smarter with what they would do.
Well, and I think watching The Simpsons, I think it's kind of both a reflection and a cultivation of a more cynical view towards television, because it tends to make you think more about the storytelling process because it's very aware of it and it's constantly poking holes in it, and that like the way television narrative traditionally works, and I think that's one of the many reasons why society reacted so negatively, and now it's kind of considered like one of the greatest shows ever made. It's now tons of shows do that. Tons of shows play with meta elements, and not just comedies, but like Supernatural does all the time.
Yeah.
Supernatural loves to do meta. Are you kidding? In fact, I just watched an episode from last season where Sam and Dean went on this case where these kids were putting on a play about them.
That was amazing. fantastic episode.
That was the 200th episode, yeah.
Oh my god.
I have never seen a sweeter way of saying, we think your fans are crazy, but we absolutely love you.
You're right. I really loved it when Dean was with that girl who's like the director, and the two actresses who were portraying Sam and Dean were standing a little too close, and Dean was like, why are they standing so close to each other? And she's like, oh, subtext. And he's like, Sam and Dean are brothers, right?
Yeah.
My favorite.
Call back to all the Sam
episode.
X Dean shippers.
One of my favorite moments of that episode was when Dean found out about Dean and Castiel shippers.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have a conversation about what they should be called. Like, oh man. So, but I love it because Supernatural, I mean, I think it reflects the fact that, I think it was in The French Mistake, they even have a line where they're talking about the show Supernatural, and they say, so, I think Dean says, so will people watch this? And Sam says, apparently not that many do. They know they have a really small audience, but they also know they have a really dedicated audience, and it makes them like humble and really appreciative of the crazy dedicated audience that they have. So I find it very endearing.
Yeah, definitely. Supernatural plays a lot with format too. They just did an episode. I just watched it this week's episode, where the entire episode is from the perspective of the car. So everything's shot from within the car. So it's like outside the windows of the car or inside the car.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it works really well. Like it works surprisingly well. It doesn't hinder it at all. So it's really good. But yeah, let's move on from our Twilight Zone / Supernatural podcast and talk about Buffy, a season 2 episode. This is episode 6 of season 2. It came out in 1997, simply called Halloween. And this is the episode in which they establish, Supernatural stuff they don't do anything on Halloween. That's when everybody kind of takes the night off.
Yeah.
Which of course means something big happens on Halloween, which is in the form of, Ethan, a old friend of Giles. This is like where we first find out that Giles has this kind of like darker past, and his nickname Ripper.
Yeah, he calls him Ripper. This was the first hint of Giles' past. So it was cool that this episode, outside of just being a fun episode, gave like a little more background to Giles, and that was actually kind of unexpected because that kind of came out of left field too. So that was like really cool.
So there's a lot of stuff that happened in this episode that's kind of interesting like that. I mean, the dark history of Giles' character and, Ripper and all that stuff. But, then you also got this is like the episode that made Xander kind of useful to the group. Because he got those soldier skills that I remembered those stuck with him. Like later on, they'd refer to it, that he had retained some of those like memories.
I feel like that's intentional, and I feel like if that were to happen today, everyone would what they did today. I think it would be more heavy-handed, and I think it's important to remember that this was 1997, and it was a really different era, because they have gender-swapped Buffy and Xander, how those roles used to traditionally be in the status quo of the show, and they switch it for this episode, right?
Yeah.
Xander is the big manly one, and Buffy is the helpless female, and it's one of the most pointed moments, especially early on in the series, where they really draw attention to how much Buffy's whole character is defying convention in regards to female characters.
Right. I mean,
especially in television.
I remember they have the scene early in the episode where Xander is like being pushed around by this bully, and Buffy
also a first appearance. The bully character, that was his first appearance, was in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
And he showed up throughout like the second season.
Is that the guy who turns out to be gay because Xander goes and confronts him and he's like,
I think
he's
so.
a monster or something. Anyway,
yeah. Well, he's pushing Xander around, and Buffy defends Xander from him, and Xander like immediately feels emasculated by it, and so then you get the switch, with the costumes where Xander becomes like this big macho soldier guy, and he's no longer afraid of, people like that guy or whatever, while Buffy becomes basically helpless.
Well, the best part of that was when he beat up the bully who was he was transformed into costume too. And then he said, like, are you okay? And he said, I feel an odd sense of closure.
Yeah, I feel an odd sense of closure.
Which I thought was kind of funny. But, let's talk about the costumes of these characters, because all of the characters got transformed into their costumes. So we had, Buffy dressed as an 18th century lady.
Except for Cordelia.
Yeah, Cordelia got her costume from a different shop.
Yes.
Xander dressed as a soldier, as we mentioned. Willow dressed, Buffy convinced her to dress as just, I guess, a sexy girl. And then she covered up and dressed as a ghost. And then
I don't know.
Became her costume, she became a sexy ghost.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand what Buffy was going with Willow's costume, other than, sexy girl.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I think Buffy makes the point, like, I get what you're saying, but makes the point is it's come as you aren't they? And it's kind of like, because that's what Buffy is doing, is she's kind of challenging herself to be a different kind of woman than she very much is. And she's wanting Willow to do the same, because Willow, who I relate to on a lot of levels, is a very controlled kind of person, and dressing up like that is very not her. So I get why Buffy is doing it. It's to challenge yourself and pretend to be someone completely different.
There was a lot of interesting stuff happening with Willow, kind of above and beneath the surface. Right. Of like her kind of like when she became a ghost, she was kind of forced to shed the sheet she was wearing over herself, Yeah. And she kind of came into a point of confidence throughout, like, over the course of the episode, just because she had to.
She was the only one with her memories, because her costume was a ghost. So that basically made her a ghost of herself with all her memories.
Which ended with a great moment in which we get, like, part of the setup of her relationship with Oz. Because this is one of the first episodes with Oz. He had first premiered, I think, 2 episodes before this. And so we have the scene at the end of the episode when Oz is in the van and sees her, and who's that girl? I remember that was a thing, like, throughout that season, like, he kept seeing her, like, in, like, weird situation. He'd be like, who's that girl?
And it took him a while to actually get together. I think it happened after he became a werewolf, as I recall.
I think so
it did too, after the whole Oz werewolf thing. Which I was kind of disappointed Oz didn't become like a regular throughout the whole series, because I really thought he was a cool character.
I thought he was cool too. I wondered if it was Seth Green just wanted to leave.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
I think that was a kind of around the point that he left, I think, is around when he was doing all the Austin Powers movies and doing so much else. So it was probably just scheduling conflicts and issues with that. Right. He became insanely busy for like a period of like 5 years. He was like in everything.
That's true. He was pretty in demand.
Yeah. So that was I think that kind of coincided, like those two kind of overlapped. And he did come back to Buffy like later on to kind of give a little bit of closure to his storyline and stuff. Yeah. That's kind of the Buffy episode. Anybody have any more comments about Buffy?
I also liked, how Spike really took this opportunity to he thought this was his opportunity to kill Buffy and strike another Slayer on his list of Slayers that he's killed.
I like how he turned all the kids that turned into monsters into his like henchmen.
Yeah, right.
And he's sitting there talking to the kids. He's like, there's the sweetest meat, and all we have to do is get to her first, and they're all like, ah.
I like when it's like first happening and Spike is walking around and he's going, oh, this is just meat.
That's such a great Spike moment.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Spike lines from second season is still when he goes to ally himself with Buffy against Angelus, and he says something like, I love people. You're all walking around like Happy Meals on legs.
Spike's great. I thought, like, watching this back again, I'm like, man, James Marsden should have a career as like a motion capture artist, because he puts so much swagger into Spike, just like the way he carried himself and the way he walked.
James Marsden should have more of a career, period. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
the biggest shame is, like, he didn't really go on to do anything else after Spike.
I think the second he dropped the British accent, everybody lost interest.
Yeah.
I think he too personified his character to the point that, you know, he couldn't keep that up without ripping it off because it wasn't his real voice. So.
Yeah, it wasn't his real voice. You know, at least David Boreanaz managed to get himself on a procedural show that's
oh
still
God.
going.
I'm kind of glad James Marsden isn't in a procedural. I mean, God.
I can't even imagine that, to be honest.
Next season on Fox, James Marsden. It'll start out, the promotion will start out sounding like awesome. It's all, James Marsden is an eternal being from a different dimension. Watch as he teams up with a female police officer to solve crime. Will they? Won't they? Tune in to find out.
You know, I'm surprised they haven't gotten him for an episode of Bones, just to have that Spike Angel reunion.
I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, who knows? I don't know. What has James Marsden? Has he done anything recently that you guys are aware of? I think the last thing I'm recalling off the top of my head was Smallville.
And he was on Torchwood. I think he had a look on Torchwood.
Yeah, that's right. He was on Torchwood.
Mostly because I've seen Jen Berman tell stories about him.
That's true. He was on Torchwood.
Then again, not really many people from Buffy are doing anything. Even Sarah Michelle Gellar is kind of, you know, she had that show with Robin Williams recently, but that got canceled really quick. But that was like the last thing she did.
Yeah. And before that, she had some show on that was really bad. On Ringer, I think it was called.
Ringer.
It was so bad.
So bad.
Nicholas Brendon, who played Xander, I guess he was just like arrested recently.
He was arrested, I guess.
For like domestic abuse or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I see Charisma Carpenter every so often.
Yeah, I just saw her. She was just on Scream Queens, actually.
Oh, I didn't. Was there an episode this week? I didn't see it because.
No, there wasn't an episode this week because nothing popped up on Hulu. But remember Ariana Grande's character in Scream Queens after she got murdered? Charisma Carpenter was her mother.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah.
It just didn't register with me for some reason.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, let's move on then from Buffy. Let's talk about South Park. I picked this episode, A Nightmare on FaceTime, not only because it's a Halloween episode, but I think it also covers so many of the things that we touch on in this podcast.
Oh my God, this episode. I want to love it. I mean, I was laughing so hard just because it's like, it's funny because it's true. You don't even know, like, video stores were, like, my entire life, like, growing up, like, from childhood to, like, whenever.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so nobody has, like, more deep affection for the video store or that kind of experience than I do.
You got $10,000 because there's a Blockbuster down the street.
No, I don't think so. And the local Blockbuster here did close. I was like, and it was like, and so, oh my God, this was so funny. Just the way they played it off, like.
I love the way he'd sneak up on somebody, he'd be all creepy, and then they'd say, "What do you want, Randy?" And he'd say, "He's all, actually, leading experts say that, you know, people in rural areas don't have good streaming quality, making DVD still the best movie-going experience."
That's the best option. Making renting DVD still the best option. Oh my God!
I love how they tied in the crimes too, with the criminals that the kids dressed as Avengers tried to stop. That were like they were trying to rob
red boxes.
The red box machines, but they didn't have any money in them.
Oh my God! It was hilarious. Like when the couple like pass over like the Blockbuster. And they're like, "Oh my God, I think I saw somebody in the window of that creepy building."
Or just like whenever Randy is, like there'd be like ghosts in the store.
Yeah.
Where's this video?
Where's Turner and Hooch?
Yeah, Turner and Hooch. They disappear. And Randy's all, "Oh, I get it.
I get it.
Nobody goes to Blockbuster anymore, so it's like a haunted house." Yeah.
Yeah, haha, very funny. This guy's like, "The war is over. Let's go to Blockbuster."
So, Kat, did you watch the episode?
I did. I'll be honest, I've never watched an episode of South Park before in my life, so I had a really hard time connecting with it.
Oh.
I've never watched it because there's nothing about it that's ever really appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I think it's just a style of humor that isn't mine, so.
Did you at least enjoy some of the little jabs at, like streaming versus?
Oh, sure. I guess I was having a hard time figuring out what its attitude was. Like, if it was scoffing at streaming, if it was glad for streaming, like, I don't know. I think the problem is I haven't watched enough of this show to really have a good grasp of its tone and voice.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know.
I think it was just mocking everything. I don't think it was like pro-streaming.
Yeah, South Park's pretty mocking of everything for the most part.
Yeah,
I think more than anything, it's mocking the people that are still holding out.
Uh-huh.
They're like, like, oh yeah, why do I need a DVD, of this something. Yeah. The idea that people are still like that, I think, is more that was mocking them.
It wasn't like making some kind of statement that video stores are stupid and streaming is the future. It was just like kind of like taking a look at the current situation with that stuff, and and then making commentary out of that, just making light of it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's one of my favorite episodes. I love Randy Marsh's character. I love when he's walking around all crazy and he's all Stan.
Oh, yeah.
Stan.
Yeah, it was a total I loved how they made it like a Shining parody, like The Shining with Blockbuster.
I think they nailed that too. They nailed the Shining moments. They nailed, like when he was talking to the guy behind the video store counter. It was like the bar scene in The Shining, or that when he was frozen at the end.
Yeah, when he was frozen. Oh my god! I just really like those kids outside. He was like waving at them. He's like, "Hey, you want to rent some DVDs?" And one of the kids like, "What's a DVD?" I'm scared. Let's get out of here.
I was cracking up also, and what was it when he Stan was like undercover at the party or whatever with all the stuff they were doing with Stan, like, and how he was.
Oh my god!
It was just an iPad, but like they took the iPad hostage, and
how, like, everybody at that party was dressed up like freaking Gangnam Style.
Yeah, this episode came out in 2012, so that was right at the height when that was like all anybody was watching.
Oh my god, Gangnam Style.
Yeah. And they had the police officer underneath him, and then when Randy took over the iPad, he was like, the police officer was still rampaging underneath them, and then they like shot him up, and yeah, that's part of the humor in South Park, is just like how just incompetent the police are in the town, and how, it's everyone gets kind of like caught up, and it's almost like these like movie plot like structures, and they get so caught up in the moment of these like movie plot like structures that like all rationality disappears, and so they do something like shoot up somebody that they know is their own officer.
You mean like how incompetent like all the adults are?
Yes, pretty much, yeah. But yeah, that was South Park: A Nightmare on FaceTime, spoof of The Shining, and also a little bit of humor on the idea of people still going to Blockbuster. Yeah. And how just dead those businesses are. So that brings us to an end of Advocates of Great Television. We have one segment left. We're going to talk about what is coming up in the next week. This Friday, by the time this podcast is up, it'll be Friday. So October 30th, 2015, Grimm returns. I had the opportunity to watch the first 2 episodes of the season. I think that the season finale ended on a kind of a high point, and it feels like it just slowed down to a halt. You know how shows do that sometimes. Like, it especially happens on network shows because they have like 22 episode seasons. Yeah. So it's like they go like, oh, we're on a high. It's like, oh, we immediately have to crash that high because we can't keep that up for 22 episodes. So it kind of suffered from that. I still have hopes it's going to be fun for people to enjoy the show, but man, that buzzkill of just going from like all the stuff happening to just like a standstill, like immediately.
Oh, that's discouraging.
Yeah, it happens. It's a network TV problem, and it's still a fun ride for the most part. Saturday, October 31st, Halloween. We have 2 shows returning. One is one show returning, one new show that's a movie series that's returning. So first off, Ash vs. Evil Dead on Starz. Will, did you order Starz yet?
No.
Are you going to? Or are you gonna wait until like the season's almost over and get it all on in one go?
I'm gonna wait till the season's almost over to get it all in one go.
Makes sense. People do that with like HBO, Game of Thrones sometimes. You know, with HBO, they'll order it like the last month just so they can binge it.
I can understand that.
But Ash versus the Evil Dead. I am so excited about it. I've heard nothing but good things from everybody that's seen the first episode, which screened at New York Comic Con. The trailer looks spot on, perfect, exactly like the movies. They nailed it. I was a little worried about, an older Ash and how they were going to play that off. Everything we've seen that refers to him being an older Ash is perfect. It nails it. He's got dentures. He's wearing a girdle. It works. It just fits in there. I'm so excited. I'm actually having some friends over on Saturday night, and we're going to marathon through the entire Evil Dead trilogy and right into Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Nice.
So I'm super excited about this. I know this is not your cup of tea at all, Kat.
Nope, that's okay.
But yeah, I'm super, super excited about that. I wrote an article about it. If you want to check it out. This is kind of exploring the history of the film franchise and kind of how they put those. It's really kind of a fascinating story how they actually put those movies together. Especially like the first one. I mean, they were amateurs and they just made a movie. They found a way to get money to make the movie, and then they just made it. They just did it.
Yeah, it's just guerrilla filmmaking.
Yeah.
It really stuck out because Sam Raimi had like this really the way it came together. It had this really original style of filmmaking. That basically came about because Sam Raimi didn't have a lot of money to make this film, and so he just used what he had in like the most interesting ways he could. To make it.
We did some clever tricks to do like certain things like to replicate like steady cams and stuff like that, and then use them because he had to kind of create it in a different way. He ended up using it in a very different way, and it created these kind of like really just kind of cool like new things. Yeah,
cool stylist that's like become like his signature style now. So you see those elements, you're like, well, that's Sam Raimi film. That's his style.
Well, you even see that, like, if you watch, like, Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man 2, there's a scene in Spider-Man 2 where Doc Ock is, like, he's, like, being operated on. They're trying to, like, it's right after he's been fused with those arms, and they're trying to figure out how to take him off, and the arms kind of come to life and, like, kill everybody in the operating room. And that whole scene is very much in the same vein of like Evil Dead and the way Evil Dead was shot and put together.
I love Spider-Man 2. That is the scene I always skip when I rewatch.
But that real kind of stylized way it's shot is very, there's also, you can see some of his style, more like his style from like Evil Dead 2, I'd say. In the Wizard of Oz movie, there was a scene that was great. That involved, like just kind of debris, like hitting the sky in a really kind of, Three Stooges comical kind of way that really fits with, what he did with Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
I'm super, super excited about that. On the same night is the return, it's, season 2 of a Sundance series called The Returned. This is kind of a French zombie series, kind of. Because they're not really, it's probably closest to that ABC series that, I can't remember what it was called, where like the people just showed up again.
Resurrection.
Yeah, Resurrection. It's very similar to that, except, this had come before. The first season for the series came before Resurrection. Very similar to that, except it has kind of a creepier, more kind of sinister current to it. And it's been a while. I mean, this happens in Europe and with their TV shows a lot of times you'll get like a season, then you won't get the next season for like a couple years. We get that with like Sherlock and stuff, for example. But yeah, it's a good show. It's kind of got like a real creepy vibe. It's got its own style. It's a French series, so it has that kind of, its own style just from that alone. Like I say, kind of like a zombie story, but kind of not. Kind of like a little bit of a deconstruction on the ideas of it. They're not really zombies, but it plays on some of the same creepiness in certain areas. So, yeah, I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to check it out. There was a remake in the U.S. actually done by Carlton Cuse because he does everything. That I didn't watch the remake, but it flopped and was canceled pretty quickly. This is the actual French one, the second season. So that's coming on Sundance Channel Saturday, Halloween, October 31st. Then on Sunday, November 1st, is the return of the Librarians. So they had one season. This is the second season. I believe we talked about this when the first season was about to start. Mostly because it had Lindsay from Angel on it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's an okay show. It's kind of goofy. It kind of has that it's one of those sci-fi shows that's like real low budget, cable. Clearly, like, inspired by, like, a Doctor Who style in the sense that, well, let's do a story where we can go anywhere and do anything. Kind of like, blank slate like Doctor Who. Just not quite as smart as Doctor Who. Doctor Who's kind of surprising in that way. Like, if you actually look at kind of like on the surface level, Doctor Who is super cheesy. But if you go deeper than that, there's actually some really intelligent writing going on, and that makes it like its own thing. Librarians is like one of those shows. I mean, there's nothing bad about it. It's not like it's a bad show. It's just, it's not, I don't know. It's got kind of a Doctor Who vibe without being a smart.
The librarian, what does he do? Does he go into books like Gumby?
No, it's like
they travel through time, right?
Oh, good.
They travel through time, and it's like Doctor Who. I mean, except instead of a TARDIS, they go into a door, and it's like then they end up in a library. And then they can exit the door like anywhere else, kind of, But the library in the Librarians is like this massive, just super massive, kind of like Warehouse 13, if you've seen that, like where you have that huge thing, where it's like tons of like artifacts and different things. It is actually a lot like Warehouse 13. That's an air show. It's like, which is another show that tried to kind of do that, the Doctor Who kind of thing,
Well, that's great
because I really liked the first Librarian movie. I watched it and thought it was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen.
Yeah, so it's a direct continuation of that.
Sure.
Except that
because I really like Noah Wyle.
Yeah, well, in the TV shows, Noah Wyle isn't that big of a presence. He kind of shows up in like 2 of the episodes, I think.
Sure.
And the rest of it is on this other kind of group, so it's it focuses on them, but. It's like I said, it's an okay show. It's if you really need something that's like a Doctor Who kind of cheesy, just fun adventure that's like lighthearted. I mean, this is something also that you could watch like a family because it never gets too serious, in the same way like Doctor Who does. It fits in that same mold. It's just if you just watch Doctor Who instead, I guess. That's kind of the position on it. If you have already watched Doctor Who and you want something else kind of like that and you're willing to settle for a little bit less, then Librarian's a good pick. I'd say it's similar to like Grimm with Supernatural.
I really think that is giving the Librarian too much credit. That it was knew it was formulaic, but that didn't make it any better that it was being incredibly on the nose.
It's a little bit better. The show version's a little bit better than that.
Okay, because Doctor Who, like you were saying, Doctor Who has even just in the most recent episode, had some fantastic contemplation on what it really would mean to be immortal.
Oh yeah. Well, you're not going to get that in the Librarian.
No.
That's just straight off. I'm just saying if you just want kind of like the adventure, the kind of silly adventure side of Doctor Who, that's what the Librarians is like. Like it fits that same kind of mold. It doesn't have the same kind of underlying intelligence that Doctor Who does. But if you watch a lot of TV and you've already watched Doctor Who and you already watch that every week and you want to watch something else and you need that vibe. I mean, sometimes like I need to watch a fantasy movie, or I need to watch, you know, like a specific type. Like it's almost like a comfort food I need in that moment. If you need that kind of Doctor Who kind of silly adventure vibe, and you're willing to kind of go, okay, I know it's not going to be really smart or something, Librarians is a perfectly serviceable show. It works in that. I'd say like I'd compare it like to Grimm versus Supernatural. Like Supernatural is a much better show than Grimm, and it tackles a lot of the same things. And if you were to choose between Grimm and Supernatural, I'd say Supernatural in a second. I'd point you in that direction, you know, or like Angel or Buffy, you know, if you want to go into older stuff. But if you want to watch something like Supernatural and you've already watched Supernatural and you just need that kind of horror drama kind of thing, you know, you want that same kind of format and you just want that, then Grimm's a good choice for something like that. It's just not going to give you the same satisfaction that Supernatural will, in the same way Librarians won't give you the same satisfaction that Doctor Who will.
No, I think that's a good comparison.
Yeah. And that's it for this week. Those are the shows that are coming out. We got something else coming up next Friday, but we'll talk about that on the next podcast. This is the TV Enthusiast podcast. I am your host, Tyson. Joining me today, or who joined me today, I didn't do this at the beginning of the podcast, so I'm all off, sorry, was Will.
Hello.
And Kat.
Hi.
Thank you for listening to us. You can check us out on iTunes. You can check us out on our website, TVEnthusiast.com. You can check our Facebook page, YouTube, blah, 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 all the stuff. Check us out. That's it. So thank you everybody for listening to us. Night.
Bye.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage of all of your favorite shows.